Hello and welcome to this video, and I have a special guest today. As you can see, we have Ken Golden. You may have seen Ken before on the Sea of Tranquility. Yep. There's nobody that knows any more about jazz fusion and progressive rock than this guy. He's got a brain the size of a planet, full of facts. But you may not know that he also runs Laser's Edge, which puts out all sorts of different jazz and fusion albums, prog albums, and all sorts of stuff. And he has a label. Modulus, is that the name of the label? That's the one that specializes in fusion. And on this, we're going to have a new thing on my channel, which I'm going to call the Golden Hour. And every now and then, Ken will come on and he will introduce everybody to some incredible, unknown, out there jazz rock fusion and prog. So today we're going to be having a look at some of the releases on your Modulus label. That's right, isn't it, Ken?
So yeah, so I wanted to talk about what Modulus is. So because I have this very inflated ego, I thought, what if I started a label where I do reissues of albums that interested me, regardless of genre? If I wanted to do a country western album that I loved and I felt it needed attention, I would do that. Well, as it turned out,
are there any country and western albums you love?
No, none.
Oh,
absolutely.
Good.
None. Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm just going to stop my camera and put it back on again because it's playing up. That's better. I was out of focus, you see.
Okay.
So sorry to jump in like that.
Yeah. So I came up with the idea. It was very misguided. I thought that I would do reissues of albums that were overlooked, but at the same time, there would not be a tremendous demand for these records. You couldn't sell 1,000 copies or 1,500 copies, something like that. And the reissue market is very difficult to begin with. So, but we're littered with all of these private releases that came out from all over the world, not just from the U.S. From the UK. I could throw British bands at you, Andy, that that you and your viewers have never has anybody knows Sky Whale? I mean, right. It was so, but these are albums that I thought needed attention. So here is the approach I took. And again, completely misguided. The Japanese market is infatuated with what they call mini LP sleeves. And they do reissues, and then they put the records in sleeves that replicate the original album. And frankly, they're a pain in the ass because, as you can see, they're taller than a regular CD. So they don't fit in normal boxes. I hate them to death. But I said, here's the idea behind Modulus. We're going to press up 500 copies, no more than 500 copies. They're going to be albums that interest me. And as I said, because I'm an egomaniac, I figured everybody else would be interested in these things. And we would do them in mini LP sleeves. And because the Japanese charge so much for their releases, well, I could get away with it too. And also because I was only making 500, the cost to making these things was very expensive. And so there's a company in the U.S. that people are probably familiar with, Stoughton Printing. Stoughton Printing is based out of California. They're still in business. They've been in business for I think 60 years or so, going back, I think, to the 50s. And they do what they call a tip-on sleeve. All of this stuff, this is all hand glued. These covers are all hand glued. So that's how they do the albums as well. So it's always a big selling point these days. They'll say it has a Stoughton tip-on sleeve. So I said, well, I want these to be amazing. I'm going to charge a fortune for them because they're costing me a fortune, and I'm going to have Stoughton do these mini LP sleeves. And at the time, I think they were pretty much the only company in the US that was doing them. So I started thinking about what albums I want to release, and I even ran a contest to come up with the name of the label, and the winner came up with Modulus. I like the name, and the winner got the first 4 releases on Modulus are free. Unfortunately, there've only been 3 releases, and the last release.
They wait. And I suppose what you're doing is you're actually creating like a miniature facsimile of the original album artwork.
Absolutely.
So it's not like a modern CD where you look on the back and the original album looks nothing like because that bugs me. That does. I have an album on a vinyl, and you pick it up on CD, and you look at the back, and they've just got part of the album cover and magnified it up. Or something. It's horrible, and if it opens that gatefold,
sometimes it's difficult. So really, this didn't start out with the idea of this being like a fusion label, and or jazz rock label. It was a whatever Ken wants to do label. And I still have in the back of my mind this jazz album that I won't mention that I think that I think deserves being reissued, and it's never been on vinyl, and I would put it out on Modulus if I ever get the balls to do it. So the first release we did on Modulus was this, and I sold out of it, so I didn't send one to you. It's called Het Pandora Ensemble, and Het Pandora Ensemble, the name of the album was 3. Kind of weird because it was the only album they ever did. They were they were a progressive band from the Netherlands. Did this album in 1978, and there was a lot of improv in their music, but it had very, very heavy King Crimson slant to their music. And so that was the first release, and that's the only release on the label to actually sell out. We did sell out of that not that long ago. And I actually decided, the band contacted me. I put that out in 2012, I believe. And the band contacted me a couple of years ago and said, would you consider doing vinyl of it? That we've had interest in it. So I thought about it, sure. So it took me a while to do it, and I just pressed it up on vinyl. We have it for sale on our website. This came out back in September. It's got a second album of unreleased material. It's great, heavy crimson-ish stuff, and it gets a little out. It's really cool. So now I was on a roll, and I said, all right, what's the next album? Now, I've been collecting records since 1976, and I used to buy albums from dealers all over the world, and I have friends that are collectors, serious collectors. I mean, guys that serious crate diggers. And one of my friends had mentioned a jazz rock album by this guitarist Randy Roos, and this was the album. You can see the nice little for library use only sticker on here. That Randy, I was really intrigued because he had the double neck guitar on the cover, and I really liked this album. I thought it would be a candidate for reissue. And one cool thing about the vinyl, and this is 1978, it's on clear vinyl. So they did it. People are so infatuated with clear vinyl. They've been doing clear vinyl since the 1950s. I have jazz albums that are on red vinyl, So it's not. Apparently this label, spoon-fed. It was one of the anomalies of the label. They used to do that. So Randy Roos is from Boston. He was originally in a band called Orchestra Luna, which was this kind of weird avant-garde cabaret prog ensemble out of Boston, and they had kind of a cult following. They were very popular in Boston, and the album didn't do much anywhere else. They were signed to Epic Records. So and after that, Randy left, and in 1978 he did this album. And I might as well hold up the Randy Roos Mistral CD. Get a good look at it. And Randy at this point, Randy was teaching at Berkeley, and he's still teaching to this day, still teaching at Berkeley. and he got Mike Stern to record on this album. Neil Stubbenhouse, who's like, he's a session bass player. He's played with everybody.
The Brecker Brothers, is it? Was he with them?
I believe so. He's played
Yeah,
like everybody.
yeah.
And Illyrio Lima from Weather Report is doing some percussion on here. And the drummer is Luis de Andrade. I don't know if he's done anything else.
I don't know that, but he's incredible drumming. And you've sent me a copy of this album and the other album we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
So I've had a really good listen to it. Now, these two albums that you've put out here, I thought, oh, they'd probably be good fusion albums. And then when I listened to them, both of them have unique qualities that I haven't heard on any other jazz rock or fusion albums, which I think is really interesting. So if anyone's watching this and you want something that is full on fusion, but you've never heard before, both of these albums are candidates.
Yes.
And
so Randy, the thing with Randy is that, I mean, he really was a very interesting player.
Without a doubt, it's incredible stuff on here.
He's playing a fretless on here. He was mucking around with synthesizers, and to me, a lot of the flavor of the album, it has like a Jeff Beck quality to it. That's what I pick up from it. But to me, it was just like it's 1978, and it's just this overlooked, really, really solid jazz rock fusion record, and on par with what anybody else was doing.
Well, the thing that struck me is that when you listen to jazz rock fusion, you've got the early bands, Madfish and Orchestra, 11th House, Return to Forever, and they are really pushing it. And then by 78, that sort of Fuse-acky thing's taken over.
Yeah.
And the players are incredible, but they're toning it all down. And this album's not like that. And in fact, it really does go out in certain places. It's very heavy, very out there. And some of the compositions are really dense, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of blowing on there.
And he's got Mike Stern playing on there too. I mean, you got these two great guitar players. I mean, it's.
And I think Mike was almost like a student at that point. He was just a fresh out of Berkeley. Was it?
Certainly young. He was certainly young. I mean,
it's pre-Miles. It's probably when he was with Blood, Sweat and Tears. So it was really interesting to hear Mike Stern at that point, because he's got those licks, but they're still not quite there. And he's actually a lot more jazz. I think that is because when he joined Miles's group, Miles was very much like, he wanted to hear that sort of Hendrix screaming blues and pushed him down that. But it's interesting to hear Mike Stern. But together it's incredible guitar lineup.
The only time I saw Miles Davis was with Mike Stern. So yeah,
he was like the centerpiece of that band, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah, and it was weird because when Miles would play, like, keep his back to the audience for about half the show. But like he didn't care if anybody was in the room with him, he was doing his thing. So I approached Randy about doing this. I think he was in a state of shock, and but he was thrilled, and he had the master tapes. So we had Bobcats do the mastering, and I think it sounds great. And
it sounds beautiful. There's that sort of lush, analog production that Bobcats has brought out, and there's that reverb that's there. Beautiful sounding album. The playing is incredible, I've got to say. These are like top players, doing whatever they want to do. Smaller label, I suppose. It sounds like a labor of love, this album, rather than a pitch for commercial success, because it's too heavy.
The sad thing is, Andy, every once in a while when I'm out shopping, I come across copies of the album, and it sells for like nothing. It's like a $10 record here. It's just I think you asked me about Good God.
Yeah.
Good God. Another album that's really deserves a reissue. They were a Philadelphia band, and around here, it was a fantastic album. Around here, it's like a $5 record. It's everywhere. It's just. But yeah.
Well, hopefully this is why I wanted to do this. Because a lot of the people who love this stuff, they watch my channel. It's a concentration of these people, and the people who watch this channel, they know what I like, and they know I like fiery fusion out there, prog. I can go towards free jazz. I can go towards metal. I can, all that. They know what I like, and so if I'd have thought, if you'd have sent me over some sort of Dave Sanborn type Fusaki albums, which I like, but I thought, well, I can't see any point in pushing those. But this, my lot, the viewers of this channel are going to love this album. So just want to hold it up again, and we'll have a
sure.
Well,
here's the
Randy Roos Mistel, and I'm assuming that double deck is not like a sort of John McLaughlin, Jimmy Page double deck. I think that shine is the shine of the metal fretboard on the fretless guitar.
I can't hold up the album because it's got that damn sticker on it. But if you look at the bottom, I'm putting my finger on it. You can actually see. So yeah, and then the one thing I'm going to warn everybody that watches this: it's expensive. I mean, I charge a lot of money for them because they cost me a fortune, and they were expensive to produce. But I still have it. The Het Pandora. If anybody asks me, I could sell them the vinyl, but
so you haven't got any CDs.
I don't sold any of the CDs. So,
but if they want to check out that Randy Roos album, get a copy, could you tell them where they go, where your site is?
Yeah, it's lasercd.com, lasercd.com.
And the link will be down below, So honestly, if you want a great full-on 70s fusion virtuoso album, you can't go wrong with that. And I think if you like Mike Stern, Schofield, Holdsworth, any of those guys, check that Randy Roos out. I think he's like he's still a guitar teacher at Berkeley, isn't he? So he seems to have moved over to that. So you got to be pretty good to have that.
He has a studio. His studio is overlooking the lake that they filmed on Golden Pond, movie on Golden Pond. So,
really?
Yeah, his house is on the lake. And the other thing is, he's put out other albums. I think he kind of went off maybe into like a little bit of like the new age territory. But he was in this jam band, this sort of interesting jam band for a while called Club de Elf. And they were like an improv jazz rock band. He's not. I don't know if he recorded with them. He may have. So they were interesting bunch of guys. They're still around, but he's not in the band anymore. So so Randy's album was the second album that we did on Modulus. And my friend Mike O'Neill was the person who told me about Randy's album. Mike's a serious collector and knows more about prog than probably anybody I know. And he tipped me off to that, and he tipped me off to the next one. And the next one is interesting. It's by a New Jersey band, and they're called Phaze. And here's the album cover. Midnight Madness. And here's the CD. I can never get the bloody.
No,
never.
I know what it's like.
I don't know why. I can't figure it out. I always move in the wrong direction. Anyway, always. Anyway, and again, we did a stout and tip-on sleeve, and we replicated the original. And Phaze were a quartet from New Jersey. The keyboardist was a gentleman, Regan Ryzik. And this kind of the story of these guys. I mean, they got together, and they made this. To me, it's one part jazz rock, one part prog rock, kind of like equal, and
but that doesn't quite explain it, because this is unlike anything else in the jazz rock fusion canon, I think, and I found this one fascinating. Randy Roos is just really high level virtuoso jazz rock fusion. Those guys can play. I mean, it's got Mike Stern on guitar. This is something different. I don't think I've ever heard an album like this.
It's got this incredible energy to it, And
they're not from the world of jazz rock. The thing that struck me, could you want to tell a story about how this album was made? Because it is fascinating.
well, they kind of got together, and then there's this label out of Cincinnati called QCA. And QCA had a recording studio. They're kind of like a lot of like independent bands recorded there. And QCA had a label, yeah, the Red Mark, and they were kind of a they were kind of like a bottom feeder label, you know. And they recorded they were jazz rock was a thing. This is 1979, and they wanted to get on the bandwagon. So they signed Phaze, and the guys drove out from New Jersey to Cincinnati, recorded the album like in a few days, I believe. And the album came out. It did nothing. I mean, there was no promotion. There was no, in fact, the band didn't get paid any royalties or anything. It was so bad that I'm going to show you something else. That 2 years later, Regan reissued the album, and he changed the name to Fusion Quartet Comprovisations. It's the same album. And he just changed the packaging. Song titles are the same. And if you read the liner notes on the back, it's kind of funny because it talks about Phaze. And all four musicians played together in a now defunct fusion band called Phaze from 1977 to 1979. So they were kind of daring the label to kind of, you know, hey, you haven't paid us, you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So they put it out. And of course, this version did absolutely nothing as well. It's just the playing. It's just the playing on this album is just off the charts. I think it's just blazing throughout.
I've never. When I put it on, I was like going, "Is this good or bad?" But when it first kicks off, it's like so in your face. They're flying, but they're also wobbly. It's like you think, "Whoa, this is hysterical. This is manic." It's not because, and I to tell the story, these guys are not from like the academic jazz world, are they? These are a bunch of kids, really talented players that have basically decamped into this house, lived together for 2 years, listened to like Mavish Orchestra, listened to ELP, listened to Stravinsky, and had just been played all day. They said they ate together, and it's a bit like a sort of jazz rock version of like Trap Bass Replica, isn't it? 2 years of them in this little tunnel of concentration. They walk in ready to go. Like in 2 days, they put everything down. And there's ideas on this that I just haven't heard anywhere else. And I when I was listening to it, what struck me, I thought every single legendary fusion band is not really a band. It's a jazz guy that got a deal, and then say, what players have we got? And they go to the jazz world, and you go, we'll get Jan Hammer, and I'll get Rick Laird, or let's get, Alphonse Moose on. Let's get, it's that type. These are bands put together by record labels, whereas this is it's like a punk rock jazz rock band.
Yeah.
And because of that, they don't care. It's like when they're improvising, that it's like they go off down tangents, and if they want to go there, they go there. It's like avant-garde, free, funk, it's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And the playing is incredible, but it just doesn't follow the normal rules of jazz rock.
The way I described it was like if Keith Emerson played in Return to Forever, it's because I do hear Chick Corea in his playing, but I do hear a lot of like Keith Emerson, particularly like in the piano work and stuff.
That's the other weird thing is it's acoustic piano, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so this guy's playing acoustic piano in this really heavy, fiery band, and it sounds like he's just destroying his hands. He's playing and sometimes it gets so manic, it just sounds like he's smashing his hands up and down the piano. I thought, and then when he moves to like a synth, like a Moog sound, and he's all over the place on that. But the piano playing is bonkers. They're all incredible bass playing on there. A lot of slap bass in there, which is
and they're still playing. So
no, they're incredible players. It's just they're not. It doesn't seem to. It's just it's got a spirit to it. They're doing this because they're in that mode which you get into as musicians, and it's very seldom. I had a band when I was like in my late teens, early 20s called Sinister Footwear, and we were like this. We would go into a room, practice all day long, all night, all improvising mad stuff. We used to get gigs. We had this cult following, but we never recorded anything. I've got cassette tapes of, and it was bonkers. It was bonkers.
It's a
And
shame that they talk about in the liner notes they talk about it was like I think it was like a 20-minute piece or so that they used to play live that they didn't get to
they
record.
never record, yeah.
The amazing thing is that the tapes Reagan reached out to the engineer who used to work at QCA, and he went digging and came up with the tapes.
But was it the story that when they went in to record, that engineer really had just started and was sort of working out how it works?
He remembered them. He
Yeah.
remembered them. I mean, all these years later, remembered them, and it was like a challenge. And he went digging through the archives and he found them.
It's incredible, and I'm gonna say, you know, people who watch this channel, this is like a Herman Zabel thing. This album is like unlike anything else.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what's the channel, you're the guy who ought to put the Herman Zabel CD out, didn't you? You were played a big part in unearthing him.
Yeah.
You know. So, but yeah, these are incredible albums, and so yeah, the link's down. I'm telling you, go and check it out. Go and buy a CD. They're extremely expensive, aren't they?
I apologize for the cost, but it is what it is. And at this point, I mean, they've been on sale for years and years. So I have inventory, but I don't have that much inventory. So I'm not telling you that, you know, buy now or, you know, or regret forever, but they're really, I'm very proud of them. The other thing was that part of the reason why we still have them was because they were so expensive to manufacture, and they were so specific, they were so targeted, and I only made 500. I couldn't really pay to do promotion, so I didn't. You know, we have our regular labels. We have distribution all over the world. So, you know, we have a UK distributor, Plastic Head. You know, we have somebody in Germany who covers other Netherlands for us, and Italy, and what have you. Modulus, if you wanted these releases, you had to get them from me, and that's the way it is, because I couldn't do promotion for them. It was too expensive. I couldn't pay someone in Germany to do promotion for Phaze. It didn't make sense. So yeah, I mean, we've had a customer base and been doing this for 35 years, and we have a lot of customers. So, you know, it's really been a word of mouth thing, and I think they're excellent albums, and the people that know, and they bought it, and people that trust my taste, dummies, they idiots, but they bought it, and you know, the feedback on the records has been fantastic.
It is. They're both different. I've never heard any. They're both different in their own ways. The Phaze album is like it's almost on its own category for me. Because what else could you say? Oh, it's like so. So go and check out another album. There's nothing that, you know.
No, nothing.
It's the way they're improvising. It's how much they go off.
Yeah,
they really go off. I mean, maybe some of the live Mahavishnu albums are like it, but
right.
they're virtuoso jazz musicians that are playing within John McLaughlin's vision. This is like a bunch of kids that are going, oh, come on, can we do this? Can we do that? What if you do this? What if you do that? And it's almost falling apart the whole time. And when that funk thing that it kicks off, and the tempo is like this, I thought, what the hell? This is a bit weird. And then I suddenly realised that they don't care. They're going for it. It's an incredible album.
Yeah, it's like, and Reagan wrote the liner notes, and he's talking about, you know, this it's in 17/8.
Yeah.
And then 15, and it's like, yeah, okay.
And insane harmonic ideas. You can see they've gone, oh, I wonder if we do this and do that. And I've got to say, both of these albums, you've replicated the original artwork, but you've also, you could tell it's a labor of love. You've gone back to virtually everybody in that band, and you've interviewed them, and you've got their opinion. And so when you listen to this album, it's not just like this an anomaly going, this is weird. It's like the story is there on the album. You know, once you get the album, the story is there. This is why I know what was going on, because
Well, that was the thing. It all comes back to the fact that I'm like an obsessive collector, and when I did these, and I knew that they were going to be expensive, I wanted them. I wanted whoever bought it to feel like they were really getting something. So we had, Bill Milkowski wrote the liner notes for this, and the guys in the band from Phaze, they each contributed to this. And again, it's the total package. It's a tip-on sleeve. It's a good sound. It's, I wanted you to feel like you're getting value for the money. In addition to the fact, I think it's great music.
It is. And I think if someone's watching this channel and they go over to your, site and they look at the price and go, oh, it's too expensive for me, this album really is not for you. Because the fact is, if you buy this album, you're going to be one of the people in the world that's got a copy of this album. And I think the funny thing is with stuff like this is that if something is unique and wonderful like this, it does seem to last. It does seem to keep going. And we're talking about this over 40 years later. And so if you spend the money, you're going to be the guy that's got it in your hands,
Yeah, it's not, yeah. And for US customers watching this, it's not, I mean, the discs themselves, it is what it is. The postage is nothing, For overseas customers, they're gonna get killed. So my recommendation for them, they'll save money, is buy both.
Buy both.
Because
that's why the title of this video is going to be 2 jazz rock fusion classics that you have never heard. That's what the title is. You haven't heard them, and you can go and buy them. With Kenny's here. Well, I mean, obviously we're trying to sell this stuff, and I want to help Ken out. But the reason I want to do is because this music needs to be heard. I both of these albums I absolutely love. This is the stuff I loved. If I'd heard this when I was 12 years old, these would be my favorite albums. They're great. They're fantastic albums.
I started out at, Laser's Edge started out as a reissue label, and it was a different time then. It was, it was 1990, and wasn't that far. CDs were relatively new. I mean, and there was demand for these older titles, and there wasn't a lot of great new prog bands in 1990, and so yeah, again, being the crazy collector that I am, I wanted to take these rare albums and put them out on CD. I thought it was something interesting. We did as Laser's Edge, the Laser's Edge releases we did, they were different. We were able to sell a lot of copies, but these are so unique, these records. I just took a different approach, and good or bad, I'm glad I did them, and I'm very happy with the way they turned out.
Well, I'm hoping the audience will see that the amount of work you have to put in, from finding the master tapes, doing a digital transfer, getting them to Bob Katz, who's probably the greatest mastering engineer on the world, pretty much invented mastering. He's mastering them. Then you're having to get the artwork right and all these types of things. To do a run of 500 copies, which is like the sort of the lowest run you could do, really, isn't it? In terms of all that work to get this stuff out is a labor of love.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, it's like if I thought I could sell 5,000 of these, they'd be $15. They'd be like anything else. But yeah, I mean, these are so off everybody's radar. I figured, 500 is going to be a tough sell, but I want to do these. I like these records. So,
but when you did the Herman Zabel one, what was the run of that CD?
Well, that was different because Sony owns the rights to that because they bought the catalog. So I did that was custom pressed, and they manufactured 1,500 for me.
Is that because that's the run they do when they do it?
That was just the number that I picked. You think that these records are obscure, and I know how much you love, Herman's album. That was a $2 record. You used to be able to find that record for $2, and thanks to you, now it's a $25 record. But
yeah. But when you had those 1,500 pressed, how long did it because that's now sold out.
10 years. Took 10 years.
10 years. So this is what I want the audience to understand, that you've been sat there and that, you
So
know.
here's what you and everybody else doesn't know about the Hermann Zobel. Sony cared about two things: that they would do the physical manufacturing. They didn't care if Bobcats mastered it, right? And they didn't care what it looked like, as long as it had the Sony logo on the back of the tray card. That's all they cared about. I could put my barcode on it, my catalog number. They didn't care. They'll print whatever booklet I came up with. So we designed the booklet, and we gave what's typical in the industry. When you send these things into the printer, you give them what they call printer spreads. And do we have to explain what printer spreads are? Do I have to explain?
Yeah, I think so. I know what they are, but
yeah, you have reader spreads, which is the way you see it when it's printed. You have page 1, page 2, page 3, right? But you got to remember that, page 1 and page 16 are on the same side of the sheet. So you have what you call printer spreads, so that the printer prints them that way, and then they're cut and assembled. Well, we designed it with printer spreads. Sony never specified, and nobody paid attention. So they printed it as if we gave them reader spreads. The first 1,500 that showed up here had all the pages out of order. And so I said, do you want me to send them back? They said, no, just throw them away. I said, you don't really? They said, throw them away. So for 10 years, the misprinted Hermann Zobel CDs were replacement jewel cases for us. Whenever we got something in from somebody with a cracked jewel case, we would reach for a misprinted Hermann Zobel, throw the discs and the booklets away, and we had a fresh.
Did you throw all the artwork and booklets away?
It all went away.
Ah, you could be selling those for everyone that's now bootlegging that CD for their own copy.
I could have pressed more booklets, correct booklets, but I'm an ethical person. But that was literally for 10 years. I had 1,500 of those, and you can't believe how often we get like CDs show up here from overseas with cracked jewel cases and stuff. We have to swap them out. So so really there were, in essence, there were 3,000 manufactured, but 1,500 went in the skip for a period. So when Phaze and Randy Roos are gone, they're gone for good. And
I'm sure there's some. I'm sure we piqued the interest of some of my viewers right now, because they love to catch me out. They're always doing this. They always say, have you checked out Lancelot's Codpiece that made an album in 1973, or some weird Italian prog? But they're always doing it. They're always doing it. And so now this is me getting them back. I've come out with two of the most obscure, jazz rock albums that I could come up with. Yeah, and they're going to have to buy them, or they're not true fans of my channel. That's the basic thing.
Every country had these kinds of releases. Every country. In the US, it's so large, there were just so many of them. And, there were so many great prog rock albums that came out in the US in the 70s, that self-released albums. And they go for enormous amounts of money. And, I was thinking of like Polyphony, Without Introduction. Did you ever hear Polyphony? Phenomenal band from Southeast US, and they stole from everybody. I mean, they stole a little from Yes, they stole a little from ELP, a little from King Crimson. They stole from the best, and they made great prog rock stuff. And one of those albums that it's been bootlegged on CD, but it's been it's just one of those collectible albums, and every country has them. Italy, you name it, Germany. There's just tons of private releases that just never got their due.
Well, people don't realize you got your major labels, then you got independents, and then it actually floats down. And I can remember when I first started playing, but even before CDs were out, there were so many sort of local bands that would go into a local studio, pay, and then they would press a vinyl recording, and then there'd be small labels. So there's this ton on, you know, I've got out, I
Yeah.
could go out and I've got albums that were handed me because years ago, I actually got involved in booking bands for a venue. And I can remember at the time I put out in the newspaper, I'm looking for bands. And I started to get all these vinyl singles and vinyl albums sent to me by these bands. And man, everyone's forgotten about all this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much stuff out there, you
You know,
know.
some of the rarest albums in the prog psych world, whatever you want
Mm,
to call it, are British releases from the very early 70s. I guess I don't know understand your tax laws, but apparently if these albums were pressed 99 copies, if you pressed 100 or more, there were tax
mm,
consequences. So there were these, this band like Dark, that's like a, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000 record,
mm.
uh, Cadman. There's all these rare uh, psychedelic folk albums and stuff where they only pressed 99 copies, and it's crazy.
Well, I could when I was in IQ, I remember them telling me when they did their very first album, which is 7 stories into 8, you know, that the cassette album they made.
Yeah,
They'd got a multi-track record, like an 8-track. They'd made the album. They all lived in the same house, and in the living room they had this 8-track recorder, which wasn't mixed. It was just the raw 8-track album. And
yeah.
then they get a gig booked on Saturday night, so they'd go get some cassettes, and they would do those cassettes and master mixes direct. And
Sure.
you know, Mike would be putting them in and go, you know, he'd do a couple of cassettes. He goes, "Oh, I think I'll put the guitar up a little bit," and they tweak the mixes. So all those cassettes that they sold when they first started, those are original mixes, and they vary. And I don't know how many people bought those cassette tapes, and eventually they did you know, reissued it. But it's surprising how many bands started like this. So there's
Well, I
so
guess
much stuff out there.
the equivalent today is a lot of bands. They're A lot of them don't believe in physical media, and they're just making like 300 or 200 CDRs. And I guess they figure if they sell out of them, they'll make more. They'll just
Yeah.
print, but people don't like them. We never had any luck selling CDRs, which I won't sell them.
No, no,
But
I think this is about to return. I think people who like music, I find that I don't enjoy even listening to music on Spotify or streaming. It's not quite the same. I like to have the physical thing in my hand, and I like to, you know, be able to put the thing on. The CD quality is way past listening to streaming anyway. But it's more than that for me. I think there's something psychological about it, that I, I I I can't be asked to give the music the time when it's streamed.
I'll
You know,
tell you
people
something.
do that all the time. That I'll check this album out and I go and listen to it. And you give me a CD, I'll stick it in the car, I'll put it on, and I'll actually sit down and listen. I don't know what that is. Probably because I'm old and that's the habit I've got. But
Well, no, Andy, I have a very sophisticated system, and for digital, I I have a server right here, right? Obviously,
mm,
you can't see. I have a nice NAS sitting right here, and I rip albums lossless onto the server.
mm,
The server runs via Ethernet into my dedicated listening room, and I have a Brocasti design DAC that is Ethernet capable, and so it runs from the server right into the DAC, and I control it with software called Audiovana, and I sit with my iPad, my iPhone, and I pull up whatever I want to listen to that's sitting on the server, and I jump around. And I got to tell you, it's the most boring experience. It's terrible. It's too much of a good thing.
this
So
is right.
I like I'm very old school. I take a CD out, I pop it in the drawer, in the tray, and I sit and I listen to the whole album like I do with, an LP. And when I have all of this music at my fingertips and I could just pull something up, I never would listen to the complete album. In fact, I would find I would get so bored, I'd be listening to a track in the middle of it, and let me put something else on. And it's very, very unfocused. And for me, it's a very unenjoyable experience. That's a listening at home. If you're out in the car or something like that, I guess if you want to listen to, put together a playlist and put it in your phone and
I
plug
hate
it.
it.
Yeah,
I've got a CD player in my car, and that's the main place I listen to music. Because there's often, like, I'm picking the kids up. I've got a 20-minute wait in the car. That's when I'll really listen to a record. I'm sat down. It's warm. The sound's all around you, and I can focus on it.
yeah,
And I'll put a CD in the car, and I will drip it dry. I will play it maybe 10, 20, 30 times. And the
yeah, sure.
more I listen to it, the more I start enjoying it. When I first got an iPod, I remember I got this iPod, put all my albums on it, had hundreds of albums. I put the headphones on, track come on, I go, oh, that one takes a bit to get going. Click. Oh, I don't know about that one. It sounds quieter than the track before. Click. Oh, and anything that required my concentration, I realized I was just clicking past and training my listening habits down, because I believe that great music requires great listeners. And it's something
Mhm,
that people don't
mhm.
say. It's like you got virtuoso musicians, but I think, and I'm going to kiss their ass now, but I think the people who watch my channel are virtuoso listeners. They are serious listeners, and they've learned how to listen to music, and that's an incredible thing to do. And it has to be trained. It has to
Yeah,
be. You have to focus on it, because a lot of the best music you don't get first time. I can remember when I bought Bitches Brew as a kid. That was the album for me, because I can remember putting it on thinking, this is terrible. They're all playing different stuff all at the same time. And I put the headphones on because I bought it, and I listened to it over and over again. And then I can remember one night, sat there in the living room, mum and dad watching telly, listening to Pharaoh's Dance. And suddenly it was like someone twisted a knob, and I went, oh my God, I get it. But I was sat there trying at different ways to listening to it. And this is the thing about physical copies. It's that there's a thing going on that people have forgotten about. And I teach young kids, they're into vinyl, they're into CDs, they're into cassettes, they're into all sorts of stuff, because
yeah.
it won't go away. So let's hope that this has been the whole streaming thing has become one thing, and that the serious music people, whether it's classical or jazz or even metal or whatever it is, even dance music, but the serious ones will come back to physical product.
Sure. I get the convenience factor, the space factor, but you lose something. You just simply lose something.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I
I'm
think
not.
that
I'm.
the streaming's good for finding out. You want to find out about something, but if you like it, then buy it, because you're not going to buy into it unless you got a copy of it.
Yeah, like I'm not like a lyrics guy, but there are people who, like, they want to dissect the lyrics of a Big Train album or a Spock's
Mm,
Beard album or a Yes album. They want to try and finally figure out what the hell John Anderson's singing about.
they'll never do that.
They'll never do that if they're just streaming it.
They'll never
They'll
do it if they
never do
don't. Anyway,
that.
I don't think John Anderson's worked out what he's thinking about.
No, he can't figure it out. He doesn't
No.
either. But but that's the thing. It's like it's different. You need that tactile physical experience. And like I said, sitting there with my iPad, very fancy and convenient, man, so boring. It became, it would become like it would be great if friends would come over and I wanted to demo something. I put on some high res ECM album that was recorded in like 2496, and I put it on and be like, oh wow, this is fantastic. But
But don't you find? Well, I hadn't listened to my records for about 20 years. They were all there when I first started my YouTube. I couldn't play any albums. I hadn't got a turntable. I got a turntable, and I hooked it up into my system in my studio, and I put one of my records on. And when it first came out, I thought, "Oh my God, that sounds much littler than what I'm used to." And then suddenly the sound opened up. I believe that vinyl, it just sounds way better, and it's nothing to do with clarity or detail. It's to do with the fact that you're listening to something that's real, and it hasn't been all chopped up.
um,
And
the thing with digital is it creates a flatter soundstage, and sounds great. It could sound great, but when you put on vinyl, there's something about it that it adds three-dimensionality that I find, and I'm listening to a state of the art. I'm using state of the art DAC,
yeah,
one of the DACs on the market. And if you walked in and I put on a CD or stream something through it, your jaw would drop. And but as good as it is, you put the equivalent vinyl on, it's just there's just a little more magic there.
I know, and I think this could be for the fact that when albums were the big thing, the engineers were engineering albums to be played by people who had really nice hi-fis in their living room.
Mhm.
And so they're engineered in a much subtler way, and if you go back to something like Kind of Blue, recorded in the 1950s, but on a really good quality copy of that album on a really good system, and it seems to go beyond anything that anyone can do today because of the subtlety of it.
So I'm going to tell you my Kind of Blue story. So I have about 5 different versions of Kind of Blue. And I'm part of a group of, well, crazy audiophiles. And I used to belong to, out of Philadelphia, I used to belong to this group for the Philadelphia area audio group. And a bunch of us, we splintered off and we have our own little thing. There's like 5 or 6 of us. And we get together frequently for a nice meal and a listening session. And when it's here, we always end the night with a very specific pressing I have of Kind of Blue. And I could tell you, believe it or not, the best do you know what the best version of Kind of Blue is?
I reckon, because I've got to think about Firebird Suite by Stravinsky, and I've got about 3 or 4 versions of that. But I've got a really old one that I got in a secondhand shop, and it sounds incredible, but it's mono.
The best version of Kind of Blue is the original 6i mono white label demonstration disc. It's like the Holy Grail. And
mono gets a bad rap.
No,
and it's like we're getting into a really esoteric area now.
Yeah, I have the stereo 6i. When I say 6i, people might not know what I mean. If you look at the original, the early Columbia Records pressings, there were, you had this the CBS logo looked like an eye in like you had 3 and 3, with Columbia up on top, and that's what they call a 6i pressing. And so the original 6i stereo, fantastic. The mono's even better. There's just more presence, and there's just
and a good system. It's not mono because you're in a room, and if your room's nice and your system's really nice, it's going to move around that room, isn't it? And it's going to have all sorts of different things going on. I'll have to tell you this story. It's so funny. When I was in IQ, we got to this gig, and Martin Orford puts his keyboard off, and he was always cantankerous. He won't mind me saying this. He was always cantankerous, and they were always arguing and bickering in the band. And he sets his keyboard up, and one of the channels of his keyboard is not working. And he goes, "I'll just do it in mono." And then Mike turns around and says, "We can't do it in mono. It must be in stereo." And then Martin Orford goes, I want it in mono. I want it in mono. And this row started up. And then Martin goes, "I think we should do the next album in mono." This big row started up with him trying to put it. And I was sat there thinking, oh my God, that would be bonkers. Can you imagine putting an album out, the mono version?
There are some people releasing albums in mono, not often, but even to this day.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Kind of Blue, man. There's something magical about the original mono pressing of it, and a lot of great versions of it, a lot of great reissues of it. But that mono one, like I said, we always end the night with it, and it's just like the perfect way to close out a listening session. It's just.
Well, I think we'll use it. We'll use it to close out this session. Now we've talked about all these great lost jazz and rock fusion albums here, but we've ended up with Kind of Blue. So it's lovely being chatting to you, Ken. And when you've got a couple of other releases you want to come and talk about, then
Sure.
Please do. And this is the golden hour, the first episode. Don't know how many there will be, but Ken's got so much to talk about. I love talking to you, Ken. You've got so much. There's so much stuff there that we'll have to do something else as well. Anyway. Thanks, Saul. Do you want to say goodbye to them all, Ken? And we always say goodbye.
Thanks again. Just remember, you go to my website, buy a lot, buy often. And that's my motto. And again, for my overseas viewers, if you're interested, again, my apologies up front on the postage and the price, but I
Just
think they're
go and
really
buy
good.
both of them.
Buy
I've
them
told you
both.
to go and buy them. If you're watching it, if you got to this point in the video at the end, you've watched all the way to the end, just go and bloody buy them.
Crazy.
Stop being a
Buy
skinflint.
this. Buy
Yeah,
this
get
too.
that one as well. Get that one as
Who
well.
cares? It's money.
Yeah,
You're gonna leave it to the kid?
go
They're
and
not
buy
worth
it. You
Don't
know
leave
what
it
you
to-
think? What you worried about? I've told you it's a good album. You'll be happy. You know.
Absolutely. Listen,